Meet myself. Hello, everybody. I'm from Tarrant County Democratic Party, but that's not my name. My name is Heather Boyd. We're also live streaming this virtual town hall on the Facebook page. So if anybody's out there in Facebook land, I'm sort of checking on that soon. A lot of the calls and the questions that we get for the chat, we're pretty much answering those that were already pre-submitted. If you're on the Zoom call, just submit any questions through the chat itself that you have for our special guest. If you happen to be on the Facebook page itself, feel free to enter in the comments on the live video if you have any questions. And so we'll start in a few minutes. I'm just admitting everybody into the chat right now. And then when it sort of slows down for a little bit, then we can get started. Okay, so I see us on the Facebook page and I see us in Zoom, so just be a few more minutes. And if anybody on the Zoom, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and Luke and I will take a look at them. If you happen to be on the Facebook, the live Facebook live stream, you can definitely enter those in the comments. All right. Oh, and also mute. Please mute yourself.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, how are you? Oh, Deborah, is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
I've got to find you. Did you want to give any remarks, quick remarks in the beginning before we get started?
No, just get started. I was a little late getting on.
Okay, not a problem.
Okay.
So I see a lot of people on our Facebook live stream as well as in Zoom. Let me see. So it's 3:04. Let's just give it another minute.
Well, since we have a minute, okay, so I'll just say this very quickly. I am so excited to see so many people joining in today. I think you all know that even though we're in the midst of a pandemic, and I don't think that Texas is really going to open up anytime soon. It is delightful to see so many activists willing to get involved and continue the work that we're already doing at Tarrant County Democratic Party. So today should be a good learning experience for all of us. And I already see some questions are coming across. So I think this is a good opportunity for us here in Tarrant County because we've got a lot of folks to elect in November. And thank you, Heather, for pulling us together.
You're welcome. I still see a lot. I'm probably going to have to do IT. I probably will need like an IT tech support person because I guess our chats are so popular. We have a lot of people joining in at once. So, I know I sometimes wear many hats. Yeah, I was going to say, Myra, you? I probably, here, Myra, I'm going to add you as a co-host to sort of help me out to do the chat. Thank you, Myra. And I'm actually looking a little bit on our Facebook live stream. So if you have not jumped or liked our Facebook page, Our Facebook page is at facebook.com/Tarrant Democratic Party. As well as, since we have a guest from our state party, Texas Democratic Party, you can always go to Texas Democrats. That's the Facebook page. And, you know, of course, just Google, and you'll definitely be able to check out everything that's going on with your county party and your state party. So we previously heard from County Chair Deborah Peoples. She's here as well. You know, she joined us. What I really want to do is just a little bit of housekeeping. If you don't know who I am, my name is Heather Buen. I'm the communications chair for Tarrant County Democratic Party. I'm also a precinct chair for precinct 1197. So I'm going to rep my precinct a little bit. And today's virtual chat is going to be everything regarding, you know, whether to vote by mail, and also voter registration, things like that. We have the honor of having a guest from the Texas Democratic Party, Luke Warford. He is the director for voter expansion, and we will have like a pretty casual chat about voter registration, things specific to Tarrant County. So some data and analytics around, you know, what's going on in Tarrant County. As well as the latest update regarding the recent court case, if you haven't heard, about the vote by mail, or the option for vote by mail, of course, during, you know, where we are right now with the pandemic for COVID-19. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I know that just to let you know, the county party office, it is still closed, you know, as far as walk-ins. If you have a question, though, or need to contact someone, you can still call the county party office at 817-335-8683. You can also send an email to info@tarrantdemocrats.org. And other than that, I'll take it away and send off to Luke, if you don't mind. There we go.
Can everybody hear me? Great, awesome. It's always good to check before I just start jumping in. So just to start, I want to take a second to just say thank you to Heather and Deborah and the team at the Tarrant County Democratic Party. I think y'all are doing incredible work up here. We down in Austin continue to be incredibly excited about Tarrant County and the work that everyone up here is doing. And I think, especially as Deborah said, in the time of this crisis, in the time of so much uncertainty, the leadership we're seeing from folks up in Tarrant County is really exciting to see. And it's really the type of stuff that we would love to see in county Democratic parties across the state. So I think the first thing I'll say, and I'll introduce myself and talk a little bit about my role, but before I get into it, I tend to be a pretty informal person. So if at any point when I'm talking, if you have questions, you want to either unmute yourself and just ask, or put them in the chat, like totally fine to do that. I think the more that this can be conversational, the better. I'm interested in hearing from you all as well and learning about what you're thinking about, what's important to you. So really want to start with that, and just encourage folks to participate and chime in whenever they want. I think just to get started, I mean, this is, it's an uncertain time, right? I think this is unprecedented for folks at the state party, for folks in all of our county parties across the state, for activists across the state. And we've seen both people, trying to figure out how to go forward, what they should do, how to continue to fight the good fight, but also just like an incredible amount of excitement and activism. I think there were, the first few weeks when people started quarantining, there was a lot of there's a lot of concern, and I think there continues to be a lot, and that is totally justified and it makes sense. But something that we've also seen is just like, constant outreach from folks across the state, including in Tarrant County, for folks wanting to say, hey, we still, there's still an election in November, and there's still, candidates up and down the ballot that we want to support. And I think I personally, and I can speak for everybody at the state party, that we've just been really inspired and excited by that. Transitioning to Tarrant County a bit, and you all know this, but I'll reiterate it. I really cannot overstate how much of a priority Tarrant County is for the state party. You guys are one of the biggest parties or counties in the state. I think there are seats up and down the ballot that we can win here. I think the potential in terms of both registering new Democrats, increasing turnout of already registered Democrats, and trying to get folks who are eligible to vote by mail in Tarrant County is just cannot be overstated. And so something else I want to say is that, like, our county party services team and are here to support you. I'm here to support you, and to the extent that we can facilitate making your work as successful as possible, we're happy to do that. I'll get into some numbers a little bit later, but I think something that we've been getting a lot of questions about is just the vote by mail lawsuit and where things stand there. So I want to start just by addressing that. As many of you have seen, and we've put out press releases, and we put up a blog post today. Obviously, we were in court with Travis County about the definition of who is eligible to vote by mail, calling for an expansion of the definition to include essentially that anyone that is social distancing because of COVID would be eligible to vote by mail. We, as many folks will know, got a promising outcome from the court case, but I do just want to caution that that's just sort of the first step in what can be a hopefully not multi-month, but a process that will not be totally resolved for another few weeks or a month at least. I think our guidance there, the state has appealed. Our guidance is that, and this is in accordance with what the Secretary of State has said, is we're encouraging folks at the county level to work with their county election administrators to try and get clarity on how they're interpreting the ruling and how they're going to be applying vote by mail, going to be applying the laws or the statute going forward. We've already seen some counties like Harris and Travis get out in front of this and put pretty clear guidance on their particular websites, and and we expect to see that to continue. That counties are gonna and county election administrators are gonna step up and set a clear definition there. But we do want to caution that it's possible that the ruling will be overturned. It's possible that nothing is final yet. So I think, although, as I said, it's and we're hoping to have clarity in a few weeks or well before. There's obviously a time constraint here, and so this is going to move through the courts more quickly than it normally would, just because there's a primary runoff on July 14th. And so I think the thing that we'll say is, like, we appreciate folks navigating this time and sort of like bearing with the process as we try to seek the level of clarity. I see a couple of questions coming in that are on this in particular, so I'm going to try to address those now before moving on. Does that work, Heather? Yeah. Cool.
No, that's perfect. This is Deb. That's perfect because I don't want to give people false hope. And I have been encouraging people to keep on with business as usual, because I am concerned that it will get overturned. So I have talked to our elections administrator, and we really are sticking, he's really sticking to what the law says right now. So if you could address that, I want people, you know, I'm hoping it goes through, but just in case it doesn't, we are stuck with what we have now.
Yeah, Deborah, I couldn't have said it better. I totally 100% agree with that. And I think the thing that's important for folks to remember is that there is an incredible amount that we can do in this space within the context prior to getting a ruling, right? Like, obviously, if we get clarity that the definition has changed, there's a whole strategy, there's a whole, you know, we're talking about what we'll do, what the actions we'll take, what the guidance we'll put out, things like that, the recommendations we'll make, all that. But in the meantime, I think that's actually a great transition to just talk a little bit about our senior wellness checks program, which I know a lot of folks on the call will be familiar with, but I want to talk through as well. Just to start with some high level numbers. So, you know, there's over 200,000 seniors in Tarrant County who are eligible to vote by mail. And if you include the full definition of folks who are disabled or incarcerated, there's probably over 400,000 people in Tarrant County that are eligible to vote by mail. You know, about half of them are Democrats. And so that's a huge opportunity, especially if you even just look at the population of that's 65 or older. That's a huge population of folks that's eligible to vote by mail. In January of this year, we did a very large vote by mail proactive mailing to all Democratic seniors across the state, or not all Democratic seniors, but a large number of Democratic seniors across the state. And we saw a pretty good return on those, but I think the reality is that the situation has changed. You know, prior to the pandemic, a lot of folks think about voting by mail and they're like, no, I'd rather go in person. I really like exercising my right to vote in person. And obviously we respect that, but I think that calculus, rightfully so, has changed for a lot of people given the current public health crisis. And I'm obviously not a public health expert by any means, but I imagine a lot of seniors, or at least I've heard from seniors across the state, that they're more concerned about their safety and about their safety in relation to voting, given what's going on with the public health situation. So I think what we've been seeing, and you know, we just rolled this out in a more formal way last week, but we've been seeing an increased interest, an increased interest in voting by mail of seniors across the state. And so something that folks can do right now are these senior wellness check calls. And so either through the Mobilize event that's set up by the Tarrant County Democratic Party, so through your county Democratic Party, you can go on, and basically it's a phone bank where it's a list of seniors who are Dems in the county. And basically the primary idea of these calls is just to check in on folks, right? It's an uncertain time. Through Connect Texas and other initiatives that the state party has launched, there's a lot of as well as resources that the Tarrant County Democratic Party has. There's lots of resources and information we can provide to folks. And I think reaching out, at least in my experience with doing these calls, reaching out to people and saying, hey, we're just calling to check in. Is there anything you need? That sort of level of human connection and outreach has been really well received in this time. And we're seeing increased rates of folks picking up the phone. We're seeing increased rates of people wanting to talk to us, just because I think everybody's, more folks are at home than would normally be at home in this time. The thing that we've then added is at the end of every single one of those calls, we're encouraging campaigns and county parties and volunteers, anybody that's making those calls, to just check in with folks again about whether or not they'd be interested in submitting an application to vote by mail. And there's a survey question in the phone bank, and the way that works is if you check the survey question, essentially the state party will send a vote by mail application with a postage paid, pre-addressed return envelope to the voter, and they'll be able to just sign it and then submit an application to vote by mail. I think we've seen a lot of, as I said, we only launched this in a really formal way last week, but we've already seen thousands of requests come in for vote by mail applications among the population that's already eligible. And I think we expect to see those numbers increase as more county parties take up this work across the state. I think the one other thing I would say there is just that, and this gets back to Deborah's point at the beginning, where any work we do now with figuring out how to do these calls, how to do them effectively, how to scale these systems, like that will all pay dividend. It all has immediate value, and it will pay dividends if we get a ruling that goes the way we want it to. So I think, I don't know, that's what I would say about our senior wellness checks and the guidance we're giving about vote by mail. I don't know, Heather or Deborah, is there anything you want to add to what I was saying? I'm seeing a lot of questions come in, so happy to run through them. But
I was thinking there's a lot of questions that pertain to vote by mail. So if we could sort of go through the questions, and you can see them in the chat, correct?
Yeah, I can see them. Is there anything? I'm a terrible multitasker, so I'm bad at reading. And so if there's anything in particular you want me to draw my attention to.
So yeah, I'm actually going to just go sort of at like from the top really quickly. I see. So Brian had the question, when will ballots be mailed out for the July 14th runoffs? And what do I do if I don't receive one?
Oh, right. Brian, this is a great question. If folks they receiving a mail ballot, don't understand the system, have questions, we have a voter assistance hotline that is at 844-TX-VOTES. It's in English and Spanish, and that's where you should direct people's questions and calls to. Ballots, technically the statute says that ballots can be mailed out no earlier than 74 days before an election and have to be mailed out by, I think, the 11th day prior, or I think is what the statute actually says. Those timelines might be adjusted for July 14th. And I think my understanding is that every county is going to be navigating that themselves. And so it is, I don't want to provide, I think like that's a thing that it would be worth checking with your election administrator on.
And the other thing, just to add, Brian, to your question, you can always call the Tarrant County Elections Office. They in past elections, what I found is, I mean, even we were able to, as far as the county party, to call and ask on behalf of others, like, hey, did you get the application? And one of the things about vote by mail specifically, it's a multi-application process. So you do the initial vote by mail application, and then you have to wait to get your ballot, right? So there's multiple things that you have to do. You have to apply to get the application. Then you get the application. Then you have to fill that out and then, apply there, send it in, and then you're waiting for your ballot. Ballot comes in, and then you're having to mail that in. And so sometimes it, and I definitely always feel, double check, always be cautious. You can call the Tarrant County Elections Office. They will let you know, okay, whether they received your application, whether they're processing it. And also once they send out ballots, if you haven't gotten one, you can definitely call them and, make sure that either you filled out the application correctly, if it was rejected or anything like that, they can answer that for you. So Luke, the next question that I have, that applies specifically to the ruling. Elaine had asked if the ruling applied to the entire state and what could possibly happen to voters who read the judge's statement, or rather read the headlines and then apply for a vote by mail anyway, using the disability designation, but they aren't eligible otherwise.
Yeah. So those are both great questions. Elaine, to your point, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding here is that this is really hard to give an opinion on because a lot of different lawyers disagree on whether or not the ruling applies. I think that's what we hope will happen is that the Secretary of State will take a level of leadership, or either we'll get a ruling that clearly applies to the entire state, or the Secretary of State will issue clear statewide guidance. The SOS is the information we have at this point is saying that this is a county by county decision to enforce this as they want. And so we're not at this point really weighing in on that. Sorry if that's.
And let me be very clear. This is Deborah. We live in a county where they actively press voter suppression tactics on us. I am not advocating that anyone use as a disability that they're afraid to come and vote because of COVID-19. The county has said that disability, and it's very open, but it's basically anybody who has trouble getting to the polls and there's a definition that Myra put on, but I don't want anybody in my county, unless we get a favorable ruling, to use that disability and reference it with COVID-19, because I guarantee you Sharon Wilson will prosecute somebody. And so right now I'm just telling everybody, let's focus on getting those people that we know are eligible to get an absentee ballot. If the ruling comes through and we've done the work to get everybody that's eligible right now a ballot, then we can focus on getting everybody else a ballot. Does that make sense?
I agree. All I can say is I agree 100% with what Deborah just said.
Okay, because I'm telling we've seen it too many times here in Tarrant County. Because we're the largest red county, they're afraid that we're coming for them in November. They know we're doing the work. They're just looking for a test case to prosecute somebody. And so I would rather not it be here. And so if we plan that the election is going to go on with today's rules, and then if it gets overturned, then we can go into overdrive for everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. And I would say that there is an inclination, because we got some like positive news, to like kick it into drive and to immediately act. But I want to encourage folks as well that that there's an incredible legal team fighting every day from the state party, pushing for the level of clarity and guidance that we need to run statewide programming on this, that this is like a top priority for us. And that because of the fact that July, we're hoping to have guidance sooner rather than later, and sooner than we would in a normal court case. So I know that's not always a fulfilling answer, but in this case, there's plenty of work that can be done in the immediate term as we get clarity going forward.
So I see another question, and this is from Beth Kelly. So Beth Kelly is our chair of the Precinct Leadership Committee. So she wants to know if the state party is going to do another mailing, like a mass mailing, like what they did previously for vote by mail applications.
Beth, that's a great question. It's definitely something we're talking about. I imagine that we will at some point. It's we don't have a specific date or time on that at the moment.
And I don't know if you have the answer to this question. It's from Kyle Mins. I vote from abroad. Is anything changing for overseas citizen voters, the FPCA or FVAP, or something we need to look out for that might change?
Kyle, it's a great question. I'm not aware of anything that's changing. I'm not a legal expert, but I'm not aware of anything. If you either now or at a future time have questions like that, I also think if you call 844 TX votes, that will, that comes to a team that myself and our voter protection director work on. And we can easily like triage those questions to a lawyer if we need to, or whatever. So really, I mean, on that question in particular, there's nothing that I'm aware of, but if folks have questions like that, after this call, the voter protection or voter assistance hotline is always like a great place to send those to. Thank you. No, it's a good question.
And then the next set of questions are sort of around the eligibility definition for vote by mail.
Yep.
So Elaine, and I'm not sure how this is addressed. This might be addressed in our senior wellness checks, but what do we tell people who basically don't fit any of the eligibility requirements for vote by mail? Like, what is a safe thing that we could say to someone that say they themselves are like wanting a vote by mail application? And Christy had a question: what's the legal definition, I guess, in the state of Texas of what would be considered a disability with regards to vote by mail?
So those are great questions, and I think they're essential to our lawsuit. The definition are really the election code defines disability fairly broadly, and to include I think the phrase is risk of physical harm, and so that's the central component of our lawsuit, is whether or not that includes and refers to folks who are sheltering in place or social distancing as a result of the coronavirus. I think the unfortunate reality here is that we, of course, we have interpretations of what that means in practice, and that's why we brought this suit, is because we think there should be some clarity on this, and we were asking the state to clarify their position, and I think there hasn't been we don't have clarity yet, and I know that's coming back to the case itself and where we are, but I think it goes back to the initial guidance. I think the thing I would say is we, whenever possible, my recommendation to folks is to always deal in facts rather than opinion, rather than we recommend X or we recommend Y. Given that the case is ongoing, this is in all of our using language from our press releases to say, a Travis County court ruled X, but none of us, not none of us, I'm sure some folks on the line are lawyers, but I'm not in a position, and I think most of our folks, when you're talking to volunteers or talking to potential voters, are not in a position to be making a legal interpretation for those folks. So just encourage people to, in an ideal world, like for example, where Harris County just came out with some clearer guidance and put it on their election website. If I were in Harris County, I would encourage folks to say, well, I'm not a lawyer, but I can refer you to the Harris County election administrator's website, which says X. And again, it's not the level of clarity that I know people are seeking, and really, I don't know. I appreciate that, and we have heard that from folks across the state. But we're working on it and hoping to have that level of clarity soon.
Oh, awesome. So some of the next questions really have to do with the senior wellness check calls and van and all of that. So I don't know if you can answer those questions. I know that's something that we can take back. So the first question, and for those of you that are not familiar, when we do phone banking, there's a script, and you can select an option. And when we talk about survey questions, basically what the survey question does is it's going to ask, or where you're the phone banker, you're asking the voter if they want a vote by mail application sent to them. And so you would answer the options, yes, no, however that voter wants to proceed. And so those survey question responses sort of get, it's a file that gets sent over to the state party. Even the county party can see some of those responses. And I know that the state party is going to be sending out a vote by mail application A question from Vanessa is, does that include like a posted page envelope, or will the voter have to pay for the postage?
So we're currently including postage paid envelopes. It is our plan, as far as I understand it, to continue to. Obviously, there's a cost associated there, but we don't think that cost should have to fall on the voter. That being said, I don't want to necessarily commit to long-term plans here, just because, you know, if 8 million people request vote by mail applications from us tomorrow, that's obviously like a pretty significant postage cost, and I think we would have to like reevaluate. This is I'm not saying we would or would not go one way or the other, but I just think it's a different conversation as volumes increase. I think our entire approach to this right now is that we expect volumes of people wanting applications to vote by mail, regardless of what happens with the lawsuit, to go up. They are already going up. More folks want to do this because it's a safe and convenient way to vote at home and not have to go to a polling place. And so we expect those volumes to go up, but I think this is, will be upfront and say that this is a unprecedented time, and to know the degree, how much the volumes are going to increase is, you know, anybody's guess. And so we're trying to plan for a bunch of different scenarios. And so at the moment, yes, there is, those applications include postage paid envelopes, and there's also a way on our website to, I see Vanessa posted a link to, you can generate a PDF yourself and mail that in yourself if you have an envelope and stamp. But a lot of this stuff we're continuing to look at, and we'll just kind of be evaluating on an ongoing basis as we go forward.
And the last question related to Van, I think Paula had it, was when will the new, I guess, I think she had vote by mail voters be updated in Van?
So can I ask a clarifying question? Paula, if you're on the line, either and you want to chime in or answer in the chat, like whatever works for you. Do you mean folks who submitted applications who previously submitted applications prior to the primary, or who are submitting applications like this week?
They're already identified, the ones that have annual, and I'm just wondering, anyone that had applied for applications now, and as they're processed, that information going from the county elections office into Van. So we know whether we don't have to call them again or chase them again, or have duplicate ballots going to them and confusing them.
Yep.
That's what I'm concerned about, because some of our people are actually printing the form, sending it in, and we're answering the question in Van right now. So if the state sends them another ballot that looks more official, they're going to say, well, they didn't get mine before. What's happening now? And there's confusion.
Yeah. So it's a phenomenal question. I think in terms of like, we can't control what the state does, so we can obviously only control like what shows up in our Van in terms of survey questions. So if the survey question is answered for a particular voter, that will then translate to them no longer being on subsequent lists if we've sent them an application. I think that the challenge with getting, and this is maybe a little too in the weeds, but with getting data back from counties is that technically those lists, my understanding is that they don't become available until at least one election has passed where someone votes. So if I submit a vote by mail application today, if I was 65 or older or eligible, it wouldn't show up as public record until I actually voted in an election. So if I vote on July 14th or whatever, we are looking at other solutions that involve like mail tracking and other things. We like totally recognize that that's a challenge and are looking at solutions to that, especially given that we expect demand to increase and we want folks to be able to be efficient. I hope that answers your question. It's a good one, and it's a hard thing that we're trying to figure out how to navigate.
So as far as any additional questions or anything like that, we're at the 3:40 mark. And so I wanted you to sort of touch upon sort of your role as it pertains to voter expansion.
Yep.
I will, like in the last 10 minutes or so, or 5 minutes, talk about the phone banks and how you can start making calls, but I'll do that towards the end of the call. But Luke, if you could go over sort of what Texas Democratic Party is doing in the realm of voter expansion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thank you, Heather, for bringing me back. I meant to start with this and sort of skipped over it, but I am our voter expansion director. Obviously, the term voter expansion is not that clear about what that means, but it essentially means most relevant to this call is that I oversee our voter registration programming and I oversee our vote by mail programming. And obviously work incredibly closely with our organizing team and with our our data team and folks across TDP to execute on that stuff. But that's sort of the world of voter expansion. And then there's things related, I work on things related to the lawsuit and things related to fundraising and other things like that. I'm just going to talk quickly because I imagine folks will have questions as well. I'm going to talk really briefly about voter registration. And that I hope that doesn't it suggests that it's less important than vote by mail. I think honestly, if I speak personally, I think voter registration is one of the top priorities, if not the top strategic priority for the state. If you look at the unregistered population across Texas, the unregistered population skews heavily Democratic. We estimate that somewhere between 70 or 75% of unregistered voters, if they were registered and voted, would vote for Democrats. So voter reg is a huge priority for us. I think that's true in Tarrant County as well, where there's, I think it's like based on some DNC modeling, over 200,000 unregistered Democrats just in Tarrant County. We have talked with the Tarrant County Democratic Party and folks about goals with regards to that, but I just cannot overstate how important voter registration is to the party and how important it is to me. Obviously, a lot of our voter registration programming that was planned prior to coronavirus was planned in person. High traffic tabling, door-to-door canvassing, a lot of things that you can do in person. We've adapted this week. You may have seen that we launched something called registertexas.com. Some folks will be familiar with how this system works, but essentially it's a quick form. You go on our website, it takes you about a minute to fill out. And then we mail the voter a printed, filled out voter registration application. All they have to do is sign it, put their name, put their license number or the last 4 digits of their social, put it in an envelope and mail it in. The envelope is postage paid. It's addressed to the county voter registrar. We know that folks don't necessarily have access to printers, that stamps and envelopes are more difficult to find during this, especially during this time. And so we've really tried to make it as easy as possible, reduce as many of the barriers as possible. I think with the launch of registertexas.com, that then brings up the question of how are we going to get the word out about Register Texas and to as many folks as possible. And I think there's a lot of things in the works, including digital organizing, text banking, phone calls, working on social media with influencers to try and get that link shared everywhere, working through our campaigns, through county parties. We really just want every unregistered voter in Texas to know that the place that they should go to get registered and to register easily and safely is registertexas.com. The last thing I'll say on voter reg, and then and Buddy, to your point, we do have tracking and follow up. It's the registertexas.com was launched in partnership with the folks at Civitech and registertovote.org. So yeah, we've essentially embedded their form in our website. Really, it's a great question, and lots of folks will be familiar there. The benefit of using registertexas.com is that we get the data, and so that it benefits Democratic candidates up and down the ballot. And I think like through our political institution and organization, we're going to be promoting registertexas.com in a lot more proactively than than registertovote.org does, just because of budget and, you know, priorities, things like that. I think the one other thing I'll say is that we are planning to do, we had put on pause a national change of address voter registration mailing. We still have plans to do that. I think we are just reevaluating when that mail will be most effective given what's going on with the coronavirus. We want to obviously send it at a time when we think the most folks are going to answer it, and that we also have the ability to chase in the way we want. So that's on a bit of a hold, but I expect that we'll be sending that hopefully sometime soon. I'm going to stop there and take questions because I'm conscious of the fact that Heather's got some things that she wants to talk about at the end.
Yeah, actually, the one question that sort of came about had to do with those that, let's say they did apply for a vote by mail, they did the vote by mail application using the disability designation, and then that court case or that court order gets overturned. So, you know, what happens to those voters at that time? You know, what should they do? I'm under the impression that if you're in doubt, don't do it. But I don't know what advice you would have for those voters.
And is the question, just to make sure I understand, is about if you've already submitted an application?
Yes.
And check disability, because
yeah.
I don't. What we do know is that that's a question for a lawyer, to be totally clear. What we do know, again, speaking in facts, is that the Secretary of State has said, like, there is not. Yeah, I think that's a question for a lawyer. I wouldn't recommend. I honestly, I wouldn't recommend doing it. I think the guidance and the clarity from the state government has been mixed on this, and I don't therefore feel comfortable. Like the opinion of the AG versus what the Secretary of State has done or has said it will do are different things, and I do not feel comfortable. Ken Paxton is, I think, to Deborah's point about Tarrant County and to a point about the broader Republican leadership at the state level, like, I think there's definitely risk there.
So is there any other questions from the audience? Feel free to chime in if you have any specific questions.
Thank you, Mark and Vanessa, for that. I know, I mean, I know that's not a fulfilling answer. Yeah, I know that's not a fulfilling answer. I think you should contact your local election office for guidance. Like, that's I think the Secretary of State has made it clear, if you find yourself in that situation, you should contact the election office and say, hey, what's the deal? Because, if you're, it's just a hard situation to be in, and appreciate the question. You can tell that's why I'm, tripping over it. Go ahead, Deborah. Thank you.
And you are not tripping over it. I thank you for that answer. We live in a Republican county, and our county commissioners are still 3-2, 3 Republicans to 2 Democrats. I have asked Hyder for a ruling on it. We haven't gotten anything back. And so my advice, and I have been on another call, is please do not do it. I mean, I expect that the state of Texas, Abbott is trying to open up the state of Texas, even though we are not going to open up on May 1st. And so I think that people, unless we get a favorable ruling by July the 14th, they're going to say that the state is open and people are going to have to go and vote. I could be wrong, and I hope I am wrong, but I just don't want to see anyone do anything that could potentially get them in some kind of legal jeopardy. And so if that changes, we'll be the first ones out there touting it and getting applications out. But I'd rather err on the side of caution. So no, I think your answer was perfect.
Thank you. Anything else, or anything on voter registration?
Is everyone sure? So in the chat, I had put the Tarrant County Elections Office, the phone number. So it's 817-831-6161. Because people are saying, well, what happened? You know, how do they check to make sure that their ballot by mail application has been processed? That kind of stuff. You can call the Tarrant County Elections Office. I know on their website, the elections office itself, you know, has sort of updated how they are operating, you know, because of COVID-19. So before, for a vote by mail application, you, I guess you can download the form, fill it out and send it back in. Or if you need one, there's so many ways to get a vote by mail application. I think we're very fortunate for that. The Tarrant County Elections Office itself has created an email address. I put that in the chat. It's votebymail@tarrantcounty.com. And actually, this is a good segue, though, into the senior wellness check calls. We do have sort of multiple ways that we're sort of approaching this. So we are organized, for those that don't know, in Tarrant County, we're sort of organized as far as the precinct chairs and any field organizers with HD coordinators. If you happen to have been in contact with your precinct chair or your HD coordinator, that's a great place to start because I know they're in the process of creating phone banks for their individual house districts, as well as any open precincts or in the precinct. So I'm going to actually pull up where you can find contact information on our website for our different house district coordinators. So I'll be sharing that really quickly.
So Heather, and late breaking news, as while we were sitting here, I got a note back from Hyder. It says, cool. Okay, it says they have never had the authority to request anyone to substantiate disability. If a form is complete and has a disability checked box, the ballot goes out the door, no questions asked. But he says, having said that, I cannot tell you what the DA or AG may do, whether or not they will audit these applications and take any action if they decide someone has fraudulently claimed disability. And it's that last sentence that makes me very nervous. What they're saying is if you request a ballot based on disability, that they're going to send it to you no matter what. But the AG or the DA may audit those applications and then they could take action. So I think the best thing to do, and I have this, I'll send you this email and we can share it, but the best thing to do is continue business as usual until we hear something on that appeal. All right?
Sounds good, Deborah.
I hate to be Debbie Downer on this call, but it is it's an issue that keeps me up at night.
Oh, absolutely. And Luke, you can chime in on this because Rachel King has a question sort of related to that. So she's saying, am I understanding correctly? Please clarify. Are y'all saying do not apply for a VBM application if you are not absolutely positive you will be approved? And how is everyone not at a health risk with a current global pandemic?
Rachel, your second question is perfect. That is why an argument that was made in our court case and will continue is part and parcel to the approach we are taking. I'm curious if Deborah has thoughts on the question about I don't know. Yeah. Deborah, do you have thoughts on whether or not we're saying do not apply for a VBM application if you're not absolutely positive it'll be approved? It's not that there's an approval process. Go ahead, Deborah. Yep.
I would tell people do not apply for it. Because the reason, if you're not eligible under today's rules and you're thinking you're going to say you're eligible because of a disability related to COVID-19, I would tell you not to apply. Let's wait until we get the ruling. You have until, I think it's July the 2nd to get applications in. I think so. I'll go back and check.
It is. That's right, Deborah. Go ahead.
But so I think we have time, okay? And I think we're going to hear something on that appeal in the next couple of weeks. I mean, I don't know how far it's going to go up, but I would just tell you, if you have any kind of doubt, I would wait. I know that's not making some people happy, but I think we have to err on the side of caution, because I think you've seen what our elected officials in Texas and Tarrant County are doing right now, and it is not in the best interest of citizens.
Absolutely. I do want to add or ask, like, we considering social distancing and making sure that we're wearing our own PPE and hand sanitizer. If say we vote in person, or we have to vote in person, and this may be something that we come up with as a county party, or Luke, maybe the state party can chime in, just some tips for people with regards to trying to stay as safe as possible and practicing social distancing when they go in to vote, for instance, during the primary runoff. What kind of tips do you think we should follow or try to have to try to keep ourselves safe?
Yeah, I mean, Heather, that's a great question. I'm certainly not a public health expert, and I think things that folks can do and things that we can be doing now are, and it sounds like Deborah's got a strong relationship with Hyder, and it's like pushing for polling locations to have disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizer, and having the space for people to stand apart from each other if you do have to go vote in person. I think there's a lot of things that you can do to keep yourself safe. I think I can speak to some things that I do when I go out into the grocery store or whatever. It's I cover my face. I wear a face mask. I wear gloves. I put on hands. I use hand sanitizer regularly. I wash my hands. I cover my mouth when I cough. Like, these are all things that folks on this call will be familiar with. And I think like a combination of taking care of yourself, and also encouraging the elections office to set up polling locations that are safe and where people can vote safely is really important. I do think the sort of like last note on that is that as we saw in Wisconsin, it's wrong to make people choose between their health and exercising their right to vote. It's not okay. And that's like why we're all fighting these battles. It's why everybody on this call cares about this, is because like we want leaders and we want leadership that would never put people in that decision. And I think it, in a lot of ways, reinforces for me just how important this election is. And so I don't know, I know we're almost at time, but just want to say that I and we appreciate all of the work y'all are doing and are here to support you. And I mean, let's go out and win some races up and down the ballot.
Absolutely, Luke. And and I appreciate everything that the state party does. Thank you for joining us virtually. This is starting to become our new normal, and hopefully as we transition out of this, it becomes a hybrid thing. But we're all on the same boat. We're all trying to get to November. And just really quickly, if you do want to volunteer for any of our senior wellness check calls, besides the candidates that are doing those calls, I know I had my screen up here. Like I had it up here. There we go. I'm going to share really quickly where everyone can go when they go to our website, which is tarrantdemocrats.org. As I navigate through here, there's multiple ways that we're doing it. If you go to the calendar and you click on calendar, there's volunteer and campaign events. So that takes us to our Mobilize America event that's the setup. So you can actually, phone bank from home. These are the senior wellness checks, that we're doing in Tarrant County. So it's countywide. If, say, for instance, you want to participate for your own precinct or with your House District coordinators, you can find their contact information if you go into contact. And then in the leadership directory, as you scroll down towards the end of the leadership directory, you have all of our contact information from the staff to the House District coordinators. And so you can find who your House District organizer is. They've got their email and their phone numbers. They can set you up with a phone bank for any of these senior wellness checks. And, just get started. It's actually one of the easiest calls that you can make. Yeah. Because primarily when you're doing these senior wellness check calls, I mean, it's good to just follow up with people, and all you're doing is offering them the ability, to vote by mail. And so the process is pretty easy. If you have any questions about that or want to sign up for a phone bank or need more information, you can just send an email to info. Oh, it's telling me that it's 4 o'clock, info@tarrantdemocrats.org. And we'll definitely be happy to, start making calls and, get the voters out for our primary runoff and eventually for November. So is there any last minute questions or comments? Okay. If not, thanks everyone for joining. Luke, thank you for joining and signing off. And, subscribe to our newsletter. You'll be able to see our different virtual chats that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. It's tarrantdemocrats.org/subscribe. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Have a good day. Stay safe.